Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Professor Kulbhushan Chandel from Himachal Pradesh University, Shimla. Today we are going to talk on module Political Nature of Change from paper Organizational Change and Development. Let me know that what we are going to learn from this module. We will be discussing the political behavior. We will study the two views of organization. We will be studying the heightened political activities and legitimate political activity. We will be understanding the ethics of political behavior, and finally we will be knowing how the political base be strengthened. It is known that the organizations exist in the political environment. The director's role is increasingly becoming more and more political nowadays, as they have to deal with both internal and external stakeholders. Sometimes it is considered that the organizational groups are composed of human services groups that are composed of separate political goals, agendas, and values. These organizations become political arenas in which the groups compete for resources, control, and power. This is not ethical, as political activity is seen as manipulative, and at the same time it is also unethical. A researcher, PEEP conducted his research in 1992, found in a survey that about 90% of the respondents of his study suggested that politics is common in organizational role, and 55% believed that politics is harmful to efficiency, whereas 89% indicated that the successful managers must be a good politicians, and yet almost 50% said that organizations should get rid of politics. Administrators in human service environments pride themselves on their neutrality and non-involvement in followers' politics. To be an effective change agent, the staff in the organization must be knowledgeable about how the influence key stakeholders groups both inside and outside organization. Organization change automatically creates political conflict, and advocates for change are drawn into the political conflict. Without knowledge and skill in confronting political conflicting and building political coalitions, proponents for change will unfortunately fail in their efforts to improve their organizations. Let me define political behavior. There are various definitions for political behavior, as well as different levels of tolerance and acceptance for the act of political behavior. The term political behavior is accompanied by a great deal of confusion and ambiguity. The relationship between power and politics is often blurred and need to be made explicit. Power is the potential to achieve the desired outcome and is simply the ability to get the things done, and without it, the organizations would be ineffective. Power can be derived from the expertise of own person, organizational role, control over critical resources, and power to mobilize through protests, strikes, and use of media. A departmental manager who wants to revise the way that referrals are obtained gauges power by his ability to change the referral process a child welfare worker who want to remove the child from abusive family assesses his power by his ability to achieve the goal. Power is the potential to achieve the outcome or result, and politics is the use of power to influence the decisions to achieve those outcomes. It is significant to emphasize that all the decisions do not involve power to the same extent, and nor the power conflicts are equal in every organization. The extent to which the politics is used in the organization depends upon the extent of uncertainty which exists in the organizations. Two views of organization. The reason for much of our negative perception of politics is based on how organizations should operate. Many believe that organizations are rational, having originality and neutrality. As suggested by Weber, bureaucracy was deemed to be the ideal organizational form in the large part as it prevented the misuse of power. Weber also suggested that the most effective model of management was the bureaucracy because rules, regulations, and authority resided in the position, not in the person. He focused on orderliness and fairness of the bureaucracy. After 50 years, Sheen stated that an organization is the rational coordination of the activities of people for the achievement of some common explicit purpose or goals through the division of labor and function and through a hierarchy of authority and responsibility. It was suggested that through the rational model, the goals are clear and choices are made in a logical manner. As suggested by Daft, in a political organization, the power is generally decentralized and decisions are disorderly and information is incomplete. With this view, the politics is seen as a neutral process for determining differences among the organizational interest groups. But in reality, the organizations are mixture of rational and political mode. They make decisions in rational manner and practice this approach until the situation is not complex. Many management tools are used in reinforcing the rational model. The political model is more likely to be employed in reaching decisions under the situation of uncertainty and disagreement. In today's organizations, very few decisions are programmable for which the solutions are agreed on. Heightened political activity. Various researches have shown that there are certain circumstances when the behavior is some more political than other situations. Most of the political behavior occurs when a change is introduced in the organization. There are many areas when politics tends to play a major role in the organizational life, such as structural changes or the existing power and authority relationship are challenged by the reorganization, and the managers also actively bargain to maintain the existing relationships and their power bases. Like there were extensive reorganization setting, free and political activity among the departmental heads and managers. Interdepartmental coordination. In general, the relationships between the departments are not well defined, and when the joint issues arise, there are no clear guidelines about how decisions are made. Under such circumstances, the uncertainty and conflict arises while dealing with the departmental activities. For example, the coalition team faced problems as the organizational members did not know how to work in coordination with other departments. There was problem because the power and authority were not properly distributed. Resource allocation. In most organizations, this is probably the most frequent problem in which political behavior takes place. The various decisions are based on the politics such as salary, budget, number of employees, and office equipments and so on. Disagreements occurs when the organizational priorities and political processes are used to resolve the disagreements. Politics will also occur when there is an infusion of new and unclaimed resources. It is particularly in case of new resources such as computers purchased in the departments. Changes in leadership. When a leader is replaced, there are high level of uncertainty and anxiety. The fragile network of relationships can be disturbed concerning trust and cooperation issues. The hiring decisions can also generate a great deal of uncertainty and disagreement, and political activity happens. Strategic decisions. When the organizations struggle with uncertain decisions, the political behavior will surface. It is mainly common in case of task specialization because individuals from different backgrounds and training will see the situation differently. One need only to attend an executive staff meeting for a typical social service agency to see that this is true. Legitimate political activity. In case of uncertainty, the political activities will be heightened. There are many typologies for political tactics which can be employed in the organization. As suggested by Yuki and Forbes in 1990, there are 8 influence tactics. Pressure tactics fall into the low road category of Grenier and Sheen. All the 8 influences fall into the high roads category as given by Grenier and Sheen. All the methods except pressure tactics are as follows, which includes upward appeals, which itself states that initiators of change seek the assistance from upper management. The management approval as leverage for obtaining other stakeholders' permission. Similarly, the change agents can enhance their influences by developing linkages with high-level officials and groups. These can be formal or informal, such as high-level of planning commission, participating in orientation, and many more. The coalition team could deliberately identify the strategic linkages that need to be established and then divide up the assignments among the team members. Exchange tactics. The advocates for change make the explicit or implicit promises that tangible benefits will be received if the cooperation with the change is obtained. One simple method is to identify the stakeholders' values and incorporate that knowledge into the communication strategy. Then it comes coalition tactics. The change agents seek the assistance of others to persuade key stakeholders in complying with the change or use the support as evidence of the value of change. Naturally, this approach begins by taking time to persuade key individuals about the validity of a given proposal. Within the political arena, most decisions are made outside the formal meetings, and thus it is helpful to discuss and reach the disagreements on one-to-one basis. ingratiating tactics. The initiator seeks to get the target in a good mood or thinking favorably of the initiator before asking for compliance with change. As suggested by Pfeffer in 1992, liking is based on factors such as social similarity, physical attractiveness, compliments and flattery, contacts and cooperation, and association with other positive things such as bearing good news. There are additional avenues also for obtaining factors with a target, including being recognized for one's legitimacy and expertise. Similarly, legitimacy can be established by having a staff composed of experts. Then it comes rational persuasion. The change agents use the logical arguments and evidences in convincing the key stakeholders that the change proposal is worth and is likely to achieve the desired results. The appearance of rationality is needed because power is most effective when it is restrained. Using rational processes of analysis makes power and influence less obvious and decisions perceived to be better if they follow a prescribed and legitimate process. Similarly, the influence of change agents and their power is enhanced if they follow a systematic change management process that integrates both data and analysis. Then it is inspirational appeal. By employing this method, the initiator makes an emotional request that arouses enthusiasm by appealing the values and ideals of stakeholders. Consultation tactics. The change agents seek participation and feedback from the stakeholders before implementing a change. Along with knowing what influences the tactics to employ, it is also important to know when to employ them. There is a whole psychology of timing that affects the decision making. As stated by Yukel and Falve in their study, that the consultation and rational persuasion were the tactics most frequently used, although an increase was noticed in inspirational appeals. It showed that the other techniques are underused and can be developed to offer the change agent to a greater range of influence. It is important to emphasize that these tactics can be used either informally or formally. Strengthening political base. These have been developed by both Pfeffer in 1992 and Cohen and Bradford in 1990 for getting the things done within organizations. Both these approaches have their own importance in diagnosing the needs of others, assessing the one's own sources of power, and identifying the strategies for influence and selecting most appropriate strategies. Each model offers valuable insight for obtaining the political support from the stakeholders in achieving the personal, departmental, and organizational goal. The assumption is made that this entire political process will be driven by the vision, goals, and outcomes of the changed project and not by the personal self-interest and greed. Identify the relevant political stakeholders. On the basis of the nature of the change project, the coalition team needs to first identify the individual and groups critically to the success of the project. Although each project will vary, the union or professional group, top-level managers, and the targets of change will be selected. As advised by Cohen and Bradford, that effective influence begins with the way one thinks about individuals one want to influence. They emphasize that half of the battle is won when the influencer sees each person as a potential partner. By using this approach, the number of potential allies by seeing who has stake in your area and working at building mutual trust. Then it comes determining the interests and power of stakeholders. During this stage, it is important to identify the goals, concerns, and need of various stakeholders. It was suggested by PEEP that it is helpful to identify the stakeholders' sources of power. For example, to know about the influence due to personal traits, structural sources such as position or role, and so on. Then it comes the determination of the interests and power of coalition team. The previous process can be repeated for the coalition team as it relates to the specific change project. This step helps the coalition team in identifying the resources it commands relative to the stakeholders' desires by laying the groundwork for negotiating the stakeholders group. Identify the political strategies. Prior to this point in the political process, the coalition team needs to be clear that what is needed from each stakeholder and what it has to offer to obtain the support of the stakeholders. According to Cohen and Bradford, organization members often think too narrowly about the needs of potential allies and thus limit their potential to influence them. They also have observed that at least 5 currencies at work, including inspiration, position, relationship, and persons. Select appropriate strategy. The final step in the political process is to select the appropriate strategies. These decisions will be influenced by the attractiveness of the team's resources, stakeholder desires for what the team has to offer, and the needs of the team for what the stakeholder has to offer prior to the relationship with the group norms within the organization and the team's willingness to risk. For one to be politically effective within the organization, it is important to engage in behavior that forwards the aims and ideals of the agency. People who have seen as self-serving will ultimately lose others' respect, and if mutual benefit does not occur over time, the alliance and coalition will dissolve. Individuals and groups are most powerful when their needs are similar to those of the organizations. The exchange method of influence works best if there is mutual respect, openness, and trust. With mutual respect, each party assumes that the other is competent and they talk frankly about the exchanges, and trust reassures them that neither party intends to hurt others. Ethics of political behavior. There is a wide discrepancy between what is considered acceptable behavior as it relates to the organizational politics and what is considered as unacceptable behavior. Some suggest that politics by its very nature borders on the unethical and is synonymous with such activities as making deals and compromising values. Some suggest that it is native to think that other powerful people are acting in good faith or for the good of organization, so that they too must resort to various exercises. It is this perspective that is of most concern, although norms do change over time and by organizations. There is an alarming acceptance of what historically would have been called illegitimate behavior but is not considered legitimate. The line between ethical and unethical political behavior is not always clear, and often organization members are in a dilemma about what course of action to pursue. Dilemmas by their very nature are difficult because one has to choose between two equally favorable or unfavorable alternatives. On the other hand, a decision maker may be weighing the prospects of losing funding for his department, and on the other hand, he may be contemplating slightly adjusting the statistics to be assured continued funding. Neither alternative is desirable, although the decision maker could probably rationalize the whether choice. There will be times when the change leader also recognizes questions that have no clear answers or that have compelling rationales on both sides. On these instances, when all other forms of analysis have been completed, it is helpful to use the test of integrity. Organization members will forgive errors that emerge from poor preparation, poor communication, and lack of skill. When decision makers explains a decision to a respected group of colleagues, preferably a cross section of staff, and feel pride in that decision, then it is likely to be a good one. Let's summarize what we have learned in this module. It is known that the organizations exist in the political environment, and the director's role is increasingly becoming more and more political nowadays, as they have to deal both with internal and external stakeholders. Sometimes it is also considered that the organizational groups are composed of human service groups that are composed of separate political goals, agendas, and values. These organizations become political arenas in which the groups compete for resources, control, and power. We could also know that this is not ethical, as political activity is seen as manipulative, and at the same time it is also unethical. Administrators in human service environments pride themselves on their neutrality and non-involvement in followers politics. To be an effective change agent, the staff in the organization must be knowledgeable about how to influence the key stakeholder groups both inside and outside organizations. Organization change automatically creates political conflict and advocates for change, which are drawn into the political conflict. Without knowledge and skill in confronting political conflicting and building political coalition, proponents for change will unfortunately fail in their efforts to improve their organizations. Power is the potential to achieve the desired outcome and is simply the ability to get the things done, and without it, the organizations would be ineffective. Powers can be derived from the expertise of own persons, organizational role, control over critical resources, and power to mobilize through protests, strikes, and use of media. It is significant to emphasize that all the decisions do not involve power to the same extent, and nor the power conflicts are equal in every organization. The extent to which the politics is used in the organization depends upon the extent of uncertainty which exists in the organization. The reason for much of our negative perceptions of politics is based on how organizations should approach. Many believe that organizations are rational, having originality and neutrality. We also came to know that through the rational model, the goals are clear and choices are made in a logical manner. As suggested by the draft, in a political organization, the power is generally decentralized and decisions are disorderly and information is incomplete. With this view, the politics is seen as a natural process for determining differences among the organizational interest groups. But in reality, the organizations are mixtures of rational and political mode. They make decisions in a rational manner and practice this approach until the situation is not complex. Many management tools are used in reinforcing the rational models. The political model is more likely to be employed in reaching decisions under the situation of uncertainty and disagreement. In today's organizations, very few decisions are programmable for which the solutions are agreed on. A variety of political strategies were explored and an argument presented that change leaders within human service agencies must adapt at employing a wide range of influence tactics. Thank you.